And that giant cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast, travelling through space and time and space, round the back of the sofa, down the plug hole, and then escaping somewhere else in between, as we are that podcast without portfolio, covering everything and anything Doctor Who related. I'm Kenny Smith, and I've got a co-conspirator and a regular guest with me. Co-conspirator, say hello first.
Hello, I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Dave, who's that with us? Because this was your idea to get this guest on. It was, yeah.
Was it?
It was, yeah.
Well, listeners, it's a delight to welcome back to the show the one and only...
What's his name, yeah?
Yes. It's only blooming Keith Barnfather.
Yay!
Yeah, the only thing we do know is it wasn't my idea.
Exactly. And of course, Keith, you're coming to us live and direct from Nicosia yet again.
I am. I mean, it just sounds so jet-setting, but, you know, I mean, this period in our family's life will come to an end fairly soon. For those of you that don't know, our son Harry, who's a budding thesp, we're trying to stop him, but he does seem to be moving in that direction. He goes to school here at the moment because Anastasia and I wanted him to absorb his Greek culture as much as his English, because Anastasia is Greek. And, you know, it's I wish in a way, off of our main topic, but I wish in a way everybody could live in another country for a while, because I think it gives you a wider perspective on the world. You know, the biggest problem I think we have in the world today is, frankly, social media and the absolute rubbish that gets posted and people believe. If you live it and travel a bit and spend some time abroad, you get a much better view of the world. And that's my deep thought for the day over.
Well, thank you, Father Barnfather.
Bless you, my son.
So, of course, Keith, you're well known in worlds of Doctor Who for your work with Reeltime. So tell us a wee bit about the company and how it all came to be and how it all started up and your professional background.
Okay, apologies to all of you out there that have heard all this. It's all before. I remember when we did the first convention. No, it's the second or third. Sorry, second maybe. I don't think it was John Pertwee. I think it was somebody like Nick Courtney said, yes, but, you know, if I keep telling my stories, nobody will want to hear me anymore because I've said it so many times. We're beginning to get worried about attending conventions and talking. And you start thinking, well, everybody's heard all this before. So you do get a bit paranoid. So I always work on the basis now is if people ask me to do an interview, I have to assume that they feel that their audience want to hear what I've got to say. So to everybody out there, switch off if you want, you know, and I completely understand. So, as you guys know, I was one of the founding members of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, started by Jan Vincerutsky and Stephen Payne, the sadly deceased Stephen Payne at such a young age. They started at a college, which escapes me, I think it was Westfield College in North London, as a local organisation within just the college. And then they met Gordon Blowes, and Gordon and they thought about starting it as a national society, and that's when Jeremy Bentham and I got involved. I mean, I was obviously a Doctor Who fan, science fiction fan in general, and that got me started in the area of sort of media, because very quickly I suggested doing the first convention, and that sort of led me into sort of the world of television far more, because you meet everybody from TV, you meet producers, you meet directors, and I never really thought that. I thought if you're a fan of something, you shouldn't really think of doing that for your career. That's a laugh these days, right? But back then there was no really organised fandom for most programs, maybe Star Trek, but not for much else, and there was no real awareness that you could possibly make your career about the thing you love. So I resisted sort of thinking about going to work in television. I thought it isn't what I'm going to do. I actually did my A levels thinking I'd get into town and country planning, but luckily I failed, and I only passed one A level, and I drifted into the BBC. Jan went to work there, and after I'd failed my exams and did a summer of part-time working, I thought, well, I may as well go and work where, because I'd visited Jan at work and I'd seen what it was like at the BBC. I thought I may as well go and work where I can enjoy myself rather than just sit around and count my fingers at a job I don't want to do. So that's what I did. I went to work for the BBC. I went to work for Central Services, what they called it there, which was recruitment for staff members, and managed to get a transfer to VT, videotape, and spent a couple of years there before I went to Channel 4. Got headhunted by Channel 4 to set up their library. Moved upstairs from the library to business development, which was their version of BBC Enterprises. And that's when I really got the bug. I was working on doing trailers. I was working on making copies of films and videotape programs for sale abroad. I started doing a couple of little edits for programs for DWAS for showing at conventions. And I just thought, I love this. I absolutely love doing it. This is what I want to do. And I just was incredibly lucky that I got the chance to do it.
Amazing. And it's so blessed. So many people are blessed that way. I got to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a journalist and interview people. So yeah, I know what you mean. There's that sometimes fate works out in very nice ways. So of course, we know you for your excellent interview videos, and I do stress videos back in the day, since that's how they all started. So where did the idea for doing the interviews come from, and hiring that young, what was his name again? Nick something, can you remember, Dave?
Mr. Briggs.
Mick something.
Mick Diggs.
Yeah. Well, it flowed on from what I was saying. I was in business development at Channel 4, and I wanted to. I remember. I mean, I was on a good salary at Channel 4. I mean, a good salary for the time, and I'd actually bought my first flat. I mean, not outright, not with a massive mortgage, but I bought my first place, and I was doing really well. But I said to my mum, bless her, I'm thinking about going out on my own. And she was horrified, because she said, well, you've got a good job, it's the generation and everything. But I said to her, well, if I don't do it now, I never will. I've got no responsibility in life. I don't have a family. I mean, I was only 23, 22. I said, if I don't do it now, I never will. And if I don't succeed, if I fail, then, it's no real harm done. I just start again, So I'd learned from business development about, and the one thing I pulled from business development was most people because Channel 4 was a new company. It was 1982 when I joined, and they operated a brand new way of making programming. They didn't make it themselves for the most part. 99% of their programs were commissioned, and so they didn't have a production. It's very much like the way the BBC works now, but back then this was new. And what I realized working in business development is all of the production companies that were working for them. The whole point of Channel 4 being set up by the government was to open up television to small companies who never got a chance in the BBC and the ITV companies. And the principle was very good. But the problem was Channel 4, and I don't mean this to be rude to Channel 4, but basically they screwed over the small independent producers who had to sign over the rights to the programming that they were making. So they'd spend a year making a television program. The rights went to Channel 4. They supposedly, and I'm sure did in the case of successful programs, got a royalty, but they no longer controlled the program. I thought, well, if I'm going to do something, I want to do something where I retain the rights, because it means over time I will build up a portfolio. I didn't have a huge idea of what I wanted to do. I certainly didn't have a huge plan, but I thought, well, if I'm going to go out on my own, I want to do some things where I can do that. So when I left Channel 4, I did three. I had a sort of three-pronged attack, shall we say. The first thing was to carry on working for Channel 4 for a couple of years and working for a company that had worked for Channel 4, helping them relocate into nearer London. They were a duplication company, and I worked for them for about a year and a half. And my best, I was never good at sales for them. I've never been good at sales for Reeltime, but I helped them move their company to nearer London and set up and found them the premises and everything. So I felt I did contribute something, but I left doing that after about a year and a half. But that's helped me for the first year and a half with Reeltime. I also wanted to start doing corporate and business television, and after a year of it being a bit hard, I managed to land a major client, McDonnell Douglas Information Systems, who were a client for maybe 15 years, and the person that I worked for, Paul Haynes, there, has become a lifelong friend, and we're still friends today. And the third thing was to do my Doctor Who spin-off stuff, and the idea for Mythmakers was pretty straightforward honestly, when you think about it, is at the time the BBC were only releasing Doctor Who on VHS. They weren't releasing any VAM or special features, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, well, most people at this time don't get a chance to meet the actors that they adore in the program. The conventions were
Yes.
not what they are today. Oh God, today. I mean, all you got to do is walk out your house and you're at a Comic Con or whatever. It's. I actually think it's too much these days, personally. I mean, obviously for the talent, it means income, but I just think it's overexposure. But
Yeah.
that's my opinion. But in those days, there was nothing. I mean, Dwas was it. Funnily enough, they really were the made. There were other conventions by this time in the 80s, but they weren't massive. So if you couldn't get to a convention, you weren't going to meet your favorite actors. So I thought, well, that's something we can do easily, to do a Parkinson for the older members of your audience who remember Parkinson. That kind of just chat show format, not try and make it too clever, would be very easy to do. And I started with people that I knew. I asked Michael Wisher and John Leeson, bless them both, who I knew very well after doing the early conventions. And they both agreed. And that was the first two Mythmakers which we shot with a presenter from Channel 4 who I knew, Keith Harrison, who I knew was terribly professional. I'd used with him on corporate work. And he was brilliant, just a really good interviewer. And we used him and we shot both of them back to back over a day. It must have been about 1980, end of 1984.
Yeah, I remember I first heard about the Reeltime, the Mythmakers videos in Doctor Who magazine, and I was always sort of like, I didn't have the money to buy them at the age of 11 and 12 sort of thing, but it was in some ways I liked the idea because the conventions to me seemed utterly impossible.
Yeah, my point precisely.
It was I didn't start going to them regularly till I was the mid '90s, and I was in my 20s. I used to read the articles in Doctor Who magazine of convention reports and just be like, come on, it's so unfair because everything was so London centric and all that sort of stuff. And I remember thinking that the videos would be, if I could afford them, because as I say, I was quite young, it'd be great because and they really are. They're quite a priceless sort of record, aren't they?
I mean, I didn't
even each one on its own. They're all the variety of them are so different, and they really are priceless.
Well, I mean, I didn't. Again, you don't. Again, I've said this so many times. I'll try not to say that again during this conversation. Okay, but I didn't think about legacy then. I just wanted to do them. I had my well-trained Channel 4 business development head on and made sure that I kept every rushes for every Mythmakers, which we have. Which will lend into the end of our conversation today, funnily enough. And it was about making the series. I mean, I went through turmoil over the first few because I remember editing them at this little edit suite called Fantasy Factory in central London. And I was paying, I think, about 250 a day. And I couldn't afford to do more than a day. So,
Sure.
you know, if you think back then, it was quite a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
Yeah, but then you were paying for a 3-machine edit suite. I mean, you know,
Right.
that's what they cost. I mean, that's nothing
Sure.
compared to
Yeah.
working in a broadcast suite. But I had to cut the whole thing in a day, you know, and I'd go back to drop the stills in. So it was a real, you know, it was a real labor of managing to try and get this made as cheaply as possible. And in those days, of course, I didn't own my own kit, so you're having to pay somebody to film it, and all these things add up to your budget. But you know, getting those first 2 done and getting them out, and getting a decent response in terms of sales and feedback, made me feel, and I could carry on. Now, by this point, I'd got McDonnell Douglas, so I had a little bit of flexibility. I could invest a bit of my profit. Reinvest is the best way of putting it into Mythmakers. So for the third one, I'd met Andy Grant by this point, who owned his own kit, was a semi-fan would be the best way of putting it. So I was really happy and wanted to help out and be involved. And he was brilliant. He gave me the opportunity to expand, to go on location, to do filming on location, and to be able to afford to do it. And then, of course, I also met Nick. My problem, the problem, not my problem, but the problem of Keith Harrison wasn't Keith Harrison, but it was his lack of knowledge of Doctor Who. And
Sure.
I realized you need a presenter who understands Doctor Who, because he made a couple of you know, really simple, naive mistakes in his interview. Like I think one of them, you know, he said, he was talking to, in the morning, he was talking to John Leeson about doing the voice of K9 in a booth. And then in the afternoon, he was talking to Michael Wisher about doing the voice of Davros at one point, or the Daleks in a booth. So he said, "Oh, so you two, you know John from, because you would have worked in the same booth," which of course we know as fans that
Yeah.
K9 never met the Daleks at that time. So it was and I realised there was just all these little things that a fan would have followed up on, in, you know, good interview of a fan would have followed up on, whereas Keith simply didn't know. And it was funny with that in my mind. Again, we would, before we started recording this, we were talking about fate and the way that things roll in your life. And I firmly believe that they're all there. All the doors are there for you to go through. And whatever God you believe in, or non-God, or fate, it's there and it's offered to you. And it's up to you to make those decisions. And for some reason, I've been lucky that I've gone through the right doors so far. This is where next time you see me, I've got a broken nose. But, you know, I have been incredibly lucky. And I went down to a convention, I think it was in Southampton, and Bill Baggs was there, and a load of other people, and Gary Russell was there, I think. And Nick Briggs was doing a lot of presenting work on stage, and watching. And I didn't go down there with any thought of, you know, looking for somebody to do Mythmakers. But I saw him on stage, and I just went, yeah, this is the guy. And you've got to bear in mind at this point in time, Nick was, and I don't mean this because I'm not policing myself anyway higher up in the world than Nick at that time, but Nick was nobody like I was nobody. And, you know, I still am. But he was so good, so brilliant at interacting with the people that he was talking to and remembering what they were talking about, that I just went, this guy's, it's amazing. I just went, he's the guy. And I got his phone number and rang him up a few days later, and, you know, praised him immensely, which always helps with Nick, and said, you know, would you be up for doing this? And bless him, he said yes, and that led to another lifelong friendship, you know. And about, God, he must have done, I don't know, about 150 Mythmakers, 160 out of our total. Yeah, and you know, it just went from there, you know. And I don't think we're going to talk about each individual Mythmakers, so maybe
I've got my checklist here.
Keith, don't give him the idea. We'll be here all night.
Actually, I was thinking about doing commentaries. We could watch each individual video, and then we could do a commentary on it. So there's a making of.
What a great idea. Anyway, a commentary on an interview. Yeah.
Someone write that down quick.
Yeah, then scrub it out. Yeah.
what impressed me was, early doors, because I remember seeing the adverts in Celestial Toy Room when I was a young DWAS fan person. And so just like the names that were appearing, you just like the Doctor Who names were there. So was it a case of using your convention contacts initially and then word of mouth, I would imagine, helped as well?
Yeah, it was a bit of everything, really. I mean, during the time that we'd, that I never, although I dropped out of running DWAS, I never disappeared out of DWAS. And I went to, I didn't go to conventions regularly, but obviously I'd met so many people from Doctor Who in the first two conventions, especially the second one. And I think I touched on this before, but I think in sort of like before the modern world we live in right now, there was a definite delineage between fandom and the program and the production staff and the people. Somehow I managed to fit in the middle of that. Now today there are a lot of people that do that, but at that time it was fairly rare. So I was considered by the actors and by the production staff. I mean, I remember Graham Williams saying to me once, I get on better with you than anybody. I'm not saying this to big myself up. I'm honestly not. But he said I get on better with you than anybody other people fans that I've met. And I think it was something about the fact that I fit into the middle. I was a producer. I did work in the business, and so I was treated differently, but not maybe because of me, but because of what I did. I don't know. Right, I've always credited John Pertwee, I said a few weeks ago on a post, with giving me a professional attitude, because working with John, you needed it. You had to be professional, and he taught me that. He taught me about that. He taught about being honest with people as well, and I think that helped a lot. So when I contacted those first Mythmakers people to ask them to do it, I knew them all, and they knew me, and I think they felt they could trust me, the fools, and that's what led to the first 20 Mythmakers in many ways. I'd say the first 20 Mythmakers we did, I knew everybody. Yeah.
Right. I remember Who on Earth is Tom Baker? Now that, of course, was a slight break from the mold. Of course, we did things like, I think it was Sarah Sutton had a bit of a Alice in Wonderland theme to her interview. And then, no, sorry, it was Mary Tam.
Mary Tam, yeah, I wasn't going to correct you. I was just making you bury yourself there, Research.
Yeah. Yes.
You could. Now, are you going to leave that in, or are you going to edit that out?
Oh, it was a slip of the tongue. So
leave it in.
Leave it in. Leave it in. The reputation with your viewing audience will grow.
But it shows that I corrected
straight away.
I knew what I was talking about, but it was a slip of the tongue. But
I think it's because Sarah had played Alice, did she not? Was that not what you were thinking?
Yes,
of?
that's true.
That's probably the root of the.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was.
Because I remember seeing a photograph of Nick and Mary, and
yes,
was it some kind of Easter Bunny sort of situation?
It's all dated. He never looked sexier. That was all David Howe's idea. And David Howe came up with the idea of doing it. I can't remember. He did have a logic to it. It was because I think he couldn't find a location that we could actually film at, that we could get permission. That was because he would have liked to have done something like he did with Ian Marter, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the progression of the early Mythmakers was that all of us involved were frustrated filmmakers. We all wanted to do drama, and so any excuse to, like the Myth Runner sketches that we did as features, it was all an excuse to do something where we could let out our creative juices.
Yeah.
Nowadays I obviously don't think that way. Drama is drama, but obviously every once in a while, if something has an angle that we can exploit in that vein, I would do it. I don't mind at all. It just depends on the situation and the person. But definitely in those days we were pushing it just to find an excuse. I did that with Louise Jameson when we did her Mythmakers, which I love. It's still, as I've said to constantly, people say, what's your favorite? And I won't lie, of the ones that I feel, those early ones I adore, because of Lou, but also because I think that is a really stylish production, that one.
Yeah, Lou's is great because it's not just it gives her a bit more to do than the talking head sort of thing. I'm sure everyone probably enjoyed taking part in the little
Yeah.
dramatic things. I mean,
And that was
it could
all.
be-
That was Lou's idea. I mean,
yeah,
one of the things with Mythmakers I've always done is if somebody, if the you like everything, you get people. Everybody is different. So sometimes I'll get somebody say, right, where do you want me? Sit here, talk. You know.
sure.
Other people like Lou and like Sophie interact with you and say, "Well,
Sophie's
it
was
was
brilliant.
well
Yeah,
exactly," and that was all Sophie's idea.
yeah,
So I prefer. I wouldn't say I have a problem with anything, but I prefer the latter because I obviously love it when you interact with people,
yeah,
and throw ideas around.
yeah.
It's nice. And Lou's one was very much Lou. I mean, like Who on Earth is Tom Baker? Funnily enough,
Sure.
it's very much Lou, and going back to Who on Earth is Tom Baker, your original question, that was what happened. We did. I mean, I've told this story before. Sorry, everybody. The reason we managed to get Tom to do his Mythmakers, because he hadn't done anything at all after leaving Doctor Who related to the program that I'm aware of, was I needed a voiceover for one of our McDonnell Douglas jobs. And I said to Paul Haynes, I hope everybody's been taking notes here and is following this. And I said, because there are questions later, I said to Paul Haynes, look, we need a really distinguished, you can do this with a mate, and he was a mate. I said, we need a really distinguished voice for this one, don't we? Nods. So, what about, why don't we get Tom Baker? Nods. So I went to his voiceover agent, who I had no idea was the Jackie Lane,
Right.
and a company called AdVoice, and phoned them up and said, I work for a company called McDonnell Douglas. I'm doing a corporate video. I need a voiceover. Would Tom Baker be interested in doing it? He said yes. It was money in the bank. Met him at the studio, did the voiceover, said thank you very much, goodbye, done. Did that for 2 or 3 other productions. And then I rang Jackie, who I had now worked out was Jackie Lane.
Right.
And I said, Jackie, look, I've got to tell you something. And I told her, the story, and told her I was a fan and all this. And I said, given all of that, would you one day do a Mythmakers? But what I want to ask you at the moment is, do you think Tom would be interested in doing one of these interviews? I said it was very professional. We could meet him anywhere. We could shoot at his home. We can meet him somewhere. And this is the fee. Do you think he would do it? Now, he said yes. And I think it was as much to do with my relationship with him, having done it professionally, so he knew me, and also because I got on so well with Jackie Lane, who was an absolute treasure. She was a lovely, lovely human being, and we had some great laughs. And he said yes, and the problem with that is I didn't know what Tom Baker I was going to get, because Tom Baker on a good day can be the best person in the world, and entertaining and honestly a star. But on a bad day, I'd seen him at the BBC on a bad day, and I've never hid the fact that he's quixotic and he can be anybody. So I didn't know which Tom Baker I was going to get. I might have got the Tom Baker when we did it, who just stood there and went yes, no. So I thought, right, if he chose not to enjoy himself, so I asked John Levine, who is a good friend, we'd done Wartime, I think, by this point, would you be up for coming and being my backup, basically, and we'll do some little sketches with you around the village to package what I get from Tom, because Tom's might have been sit there, goodbye. Okay,
sure.
So I can package it. So that's essentially. And Tom said he was happy to come to East Hagbourne to do it. And I got another friend of mine, Graham Steer, to pick him up and drive him, who's again sadly passed away years ago. You get old, you start losing all your friends, and by God, does that hurt. He turned up, and I couldn't have asked him to be more helpful and more interactive. And I realized I didn't need to use John as much as I didn't want to use John, and bless him, John understood. He was really brilliant at that. We still did all the sketches with him and the bits, but I didn't have to use them as much as I was afraid I would need to. And he didn't have to do anything with Tom. So I worked through the interviewing with Tom, and it was Tom who suggested during the lunch we had in the pub. Hey, the life I led, I still lead. It's amazing. We're all in the pub getting drunk. No, we weren't. We were all in the pub working terribly hard at the script for the afternoon. And Tom came up with this idea at the end of walking off into the sunset, shall we say, with this wonderful thing as I was adored once. I love being adored, or whatever it was. But it was a wonderful ending. And we shot that, and then we went and did all the little bits with John Levine to cut in around it, and it was a great day. And then, incredibly, a month or two later, I got a phone call from his wife, Sue Gerard, saying, and this was them, not me. I would never have been presumptuous enough to have suggested it. She said, would you be up for doing, because we've got an idea for a documentary, where we shoot around Tom in our home and in our village about just an odd, weird documentary with Tom. Now, I had to think about that for about a nanosecond before I said yes. And that was the first time that I was completely hands-off as a director or a producer, completely hands-off, because she was a professional, experienced director, and she, when we shot that, was totally in charge. I was there as a producer should be, as a facilitator, and that was a marvelous I think we did it over 2 days, or it was a very long single day. I can't actually remember, but it was just, my memories of that are just wonderful. It was a great time, and that's, I think, where Tom and I became really good friends. So that even years later, when I did a little bit for a friend of mine, TJ Lubinsky, who runs a production company in America, and he wanted some links done for a production he was doing, and he phoned me up and said, "Would you just go and supervise? Tom will be at the local studio. Would you just go down and not really direct it, but just be there?" And I got there, and Tom arrived about 10 minutes later, and he said, "Is that Barnfather's voice I heard?" And that's lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's really a compliment. And I haven't seen him for a long time, and I don't. It's a funny thing, isn't it? I don't know. I think Ian Kubiak's doing a wonderful job with giving Tom a continued ability to enjoy life and get out and meet people. And I think it's doing Tom a lot of good to meet fans and to continue to be able to do that and to facilitate that. I think Ian's doing a great job.
He did like being adored once.
Yes, as in the Mythmakers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned John Levine there, of course. Something that I remember being so excited about was Wartime.
Is that just a feed line? You're not going to ask me a question. You just want
I was going to ask you a feed. I was going to. You're a cheeky man, Barnfather. I used to like you.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I used to like me as well. Don't worry.
One of the hills that I die on, right, as a Doctor Who fan, is that Benton dies in the android invasion. If you watch, I think it's the scene in episode 4 when his android duplicate sort of says, "Have them taken away." The camera tracks in on a close-up of Benton lying, his eyelids don't move. So I like the fact there's a sort of parallel universe where he's still alive and has the adventure of Wartime.
Oh, look at Keith's face. Keith's going to burn you, Dave.
Keith's sort of saying, whatever. If it makes you happy, mate, let's not do Doctor Who content.
Oh, not at all.
That'll last even longer than Reeltime,
I do mean it lightly, but it's, I imagine John was probably delighted to be asked to do Wartime, I imagine.
Well, rolling the time back to after we just started Reeltime, because I think we made Wartime, please forgive me if I've got the dates wrong, something around 1987. And this was only a couple of years after Reeltime, 3 years after Reeltime had started. And there's a long history that's all in Dylan Reese's book. God, what's it called? The Reeltime Pictures book. Forgotten it. Anyway, there you are. I've made my boot now, and I'll remember it later on. Or one of you two will tell me. But the history of Reeltime book, and it's quite a sort of progressive thing, working through ideas where I was trying with friends. Jan and I had tried to get something off the ground a few times. We talked to Rafe Montague at Bewley about something, but it never happened. And eventually, I got to the point of realizing that John Nathan Turner, bless him, and and we had an interesting relationship, and I mean that in the sense of work. That I knew that ultimately he would never let us do a production which was directly licensed by the BBC, because he honestly believed we couldn't do anything that was good enough. Now, there are probably people out there who think he was right, but I believe that we could make a drama on a low budget if it was carefully thought through. So I did what obviously I was taught to do and trained to do at Channel 4. I looked around the box and I went, okay, so we can't license officially to do Doctor Who or do Doctor Who characters that are owned by the BBC, but what isn't owned by the BBC? And at that time, and since then, there's been lots of toing and froing, and at the moment that has now changed. But at the time, it was accepted that Derek Sherwin owned Unit, and he also owned Benton. I can't remember, but it wasn't the BBC. So right. I approached Derek and asked him would he allow us to use Unit, the concept of Unit, not actually Unit, and I cleared the rights for using Benton. And I went to John, and we used to have. When in those early days, neither of us were particularly well off, and John definitely was struggling before he went to America to live for a while. And literally, he used to come over to mine, and we used to have like a cheese pie together. I'd cook a cheese pie in the oven, and we'd sit and drink and eat and chat for the evening and talk about God knows what. So we knew each other really well. And he was when I asked him if he'd do it, I think everybody out there knows that John is very insecure about his acting, about his ability as an actor. But Douglas Camfield saw something in that I saw, which is, don't ask him to do heavily dramatic scenes, but he looks great and he can move right. And if you direct him right, he can really come across well. So, this is what I told him. And when we worked on the script, I asked Andy Lane and Helen Sterling, to write a visual script. And that also is weird, again, things coming together. John Ainsworth had shown me photographs of Leave a Human State. It's a folly in a way. It's a ruined sort of set of gardens and everything that had fallen really into disrepair at this point.
It looks terrific. It really does.
It's and he showed me the location. Oh, it was. Yeah, and he showed me photos. He said maybe it'd be good for Mythmakers, and I sort of logged it as you do. And then when this idea came up of doing this, I thought this could work as a drama. This could work as a fantasy location for a drama, and that's what came. And at the beginning, Andy specifically was looking for something of a different story, and I unfortunately dumped this on him and said we need to make it here, and it needs to be this kind of story. And that's what eventually we came up. He and Helen were brilliant at adapting what they wanted to do for what and I don't like imposing, but I had to sort of say, this is what we can do and this is what we can. And I think the script that they wrote for that was perfect.
Yes, it really is. It's terrific because it gives Benton so much more to do. I mean, he's brilliant. I think John Levine's brilliant in Doctor Who. I really do. He's a real lightness of touch at times.
The role and he's brilliant. He's perfect.
Yeah. And it's good to, give that character a bit of focus and just a little bit more to do outside of agreeing with a brig or saluting or having a funny bit with Pertwee. I'm really glad it happened for him. Actually, I think there's not that many other actors I would like to have seen get the chance to get a proper starring role. He really deserved it, I think.
I think. I mean.
I like John. I like him a lot.
I'm very, very proud of Wartime. I mean, I appreciate it's very low budget. It obviously is of its time and shot on low band U-matic, and we all were doing this for the first time. But there's something magical about that production.
Hmm.
There's something that really works. And I'll put it down to two things. Well, three things. One, all the people I work with. Nick Briggs came up, Marquez was there. Robin Lee, who'd been doing Mythmakers for me, came up and
Yeah.
filmed it. He'd never done drama, and but we all wanted to make it work. We all wanted to make it happen. There was a lot of fractious bits and pieces going on during the filming, not in a bad way, but obviously we were all learning. I mean, nobody had ever done this before. None of us had
Sure.
attempted it. So there were times when, I knew what I wanted to do, but nobody else understood what I wanted to do, and I didn't have time to explain it. So it was like, no, this is what we're doing. Just shut up, but trust me. So it was the group of people that did it. Amazing when you think about how some of us have gone on from there. It was John, who I really think actually managed to make a leading man role out of it.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah,
really
he's great.
did, and he stepped up, and he really, really gave everything. And Michael Wisher, of course.
Yeah.
Michael Wisher, who just was. I didn't even bother giving him a direction point once, not once. I think I
Excellent.
said to him once, "Could you go over against that post and then run that way?" When we had the battle scene, that was about
Right.
the only thing I ever had to say to him, because the guy was you don't tell a professional who knows what they're doing what to do. You should never do that with actors unless it's necessary. I think, give them credit for what they're trained to do. But obviously sometimes you've got to talk to them about production points that you need to get across. And everybody needs that at times. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a halcyon 3 days. And I remember at the end of the 3 days when we did the first shoot, and we were running out of time and we weren't going to finish. I came home after we'd sort of wrapped, thinking, what the hell am I going to do? Am I going to just, I don't know, wrap, not do it, not release it? Am I going to get John to come down and do a voiceover and, patch it together? And I cut the scene that we'd shot at the Land Rover when they break down. And he and Willis, the soldier, get out, and John does the classic thing, standing by the Land Rover with the gun. He comes back to the back of the Land Rover and stands there, and I thought, Christ, this is good. Christ, this is good. It cuts, it looks good, and I can't not finish this. And I rang everybody up and I said, guys, this is good. This is really good.
It's, to use a phrase I use all the time, it's proper Doctor Who, because it's a proper story. It's pushing the boundaries a little bit as far as being, as you say, a little bit more fantastical compared to the down-to-earth military stuff, and it gives John, who deserves it, something.
Yeah, and I agree. And I rang everybody and I said, look, I think everybody got. A lot of people worked for free on that one. Some of the people who were working on it got paid, but nobody paid for themselves. Everybody was covered. And I said, look, guys, would you come back for 2 more days? Would you please come back? And every single person did. And that's why Wartime works, because of the esprit de corps amongst a group of friends who are still friends. That's what it's all about. And when it came out, we had a little premiere and everybody just was so complimentary. Mark's score for it is just out of this world. I mean, Marquez is, I loved the score for Wartime. It held it all together. And that's when, with Nick and I think, probably before that, but at that point we coined the phrase, don't worry about that edit, Mark will sting it. And then there was a lot of that.
Brilliant.
Mark would cover a lot of things that weren't quite right with a good sting.
Brilliant.
And it did become a mantra for us for a long time. But Wartime, the other thing about Wartime is that it really led what I wanted. It gave me what I wanted to do with the dramas that I would make. And that was to make dramas that would allow subsidiary characters within Doctor Who, peripheral characters with Doctor Who, to expand, to become real, to give them a voice as characters. And if you think about it, almost right through everything we did since then did precisely that. In Mind Game, the Sontaran, giving a more depth to Sontarans, especially in Mind Game Trilogy, in Downtime, giving the Brigadier a starring role.
Yeah.
And even then with Sarah and Victoria, giving them more to do. And then in Deimos Rising, giving our characters something to develop and bring forward, making a sequel to our own production. And obviously with Sil and White Witch, with
Yeah,
Damaris, two productions I'm incredibly proud of, especially Sil, and thank God we made it, I think, because, I think
yeah,
it gave Nabil the chance to bite into that and chew it and spit it out.
sure.
And that's what he did. That really has been what Real Time has been trying to do with all of its dramas, is to give subsidiary characters a bigger part, and to flesh them out in a way that everybody has no objection to.
Fantastic. So Keith, tell us what you've been up to more recently and what's on the way, because you mentioned when you've been on previously that things are sort of winding down for a wee while, just to let you work on some other non Doctor Who type stuff.
For years, I mean, the cult TV has always been a hugely important part of what Real Time does, but it has never earned us a living. I could never have lived off the income from. In fact, virtually, I'd say it's fair to say any income that Real Time has generated has nearly always, except for a couple of years when things were really tight for me and I needed to take some money out of the company from the cult TV stuff. But for the majority of time, the money has just been invested in the next production. So the other side of it has always been the corporate work and the films and the production work that we've done professionally, where we were paid. And that stretched right through McDonnell Douglas to other companies, trucking company called Christian Salverson. I can't even remember all the companies that we've done work for over the years. The National Health Service we've done stuff for, Moorfields Eye Hospital.
Cool.
These are things I don't go around listing normally, but just to give people an idea that this was all going on at the same time. And that was the work that we were paid for, and the client kept the rights. And obviously there'd be no use in having them anyway. But the point was that was being paid for doing a job, and that was done. And that was the point. That was why I was doing the cold TV stuff separately, because we were building the portfolio. Then I met Anastasia, luckily, just before we did Downtime, and she was actually on the Downtime shoot. And slowly, and I've always joked about it, that it was a hostile takeover bid. Slowly, she got more and more involved in Real Time, because she's a director and a writer as well. And she seduced me into coming. Well, she seduced me. No, listen. She seduced me into coming. She's not here now, thank God. She seduced me into coming out to Cyprus for holidays and meeting her family. And ideas obviously came up from her father, funnily enough, about doing a documentary about the railways in Cyprus that used to exist under British colonial rule. We're nearly finishing that. It's been a mammoth undertaking over years. But we've done other ones about Greek language programming. It has been broadcast in Cyprus. So we are a broadcast television company. And she's done documentaries. She's done a documentary about asylum seekers in Cyprus that has won international film festival awards in human rights. So, she's become a very important part of my life, obviously as my partner and the mother of my son, but also a person who's been part of Real Time's output. And we've got two things we have to finish, which we've been working on, but we need to step aside from the cold TV work for a year, really, to get them both finished, which is the documentary about the railways of Cyprus, which is a 4-part series, and a documentary about a monastery at the tip of Cyprus called Apostolos Andreas, which is a very famous, it's like the Lourdes of Cyprus. It's a pilgrimage place. And we were filming all of the restoration of that, and that's nearly complete now. So we need to make that documentary. So these two have become the priority for a while. So I won't be doing as much cult TV stuff for a while. And guys, I'm 68 this year. So
Shut up.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Come on. No.
So, I'm very lucky. I've been lucky in my entire life. I'm touching some wood here. But I obviously am not going to be able to keep on at the pace that I have done for the last 41 years for Real Time. And I've got to choose my battles a bit more carefully. But, I don't intend stopping. We're shooting Colin Howard's Mythmakers next month, which I'm obviously, cool. For all the reasons you don't need me to mention, I think it's very important, and we'll be doing that.
Yeah.
We've got Tooth and Claw coming out in September at Hooverville. It'll be launched in Hooverville,
Right.
which is a documentary we made about Neil Cole's exhibition up at Hexham, the Sikh
Yep.
located. And the thing is about that one is that documentary is like an explanation of how to do a exhibition. So and the day we
I
had there as well. And it's a
I did laugh at what you said on Facebook the other day about Neil being very shy.
getting that man to go on camera is just tough. I mean, I usually have to give him at least 3 Guinnesses before he'll say a word.
It's a bit like asking you to come on here to chat, Keith. It's like,
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm always so tongue-tied.
it's painful, mate. It's like that Tom Baker where you get yes, no answers with Keith, and like,
Well, the other thing that I've mentioned to you in privately, and I don't mind saying this now and getting it out there, and then people will know, and then the official announcement they'll all go, yeah, we knew that. But I can't remember the name of the young man that came up to me. This sounds rude. I don't mean it this way. At a convention. Oh God, it could have been about 5 years ago. You will be mentioned in the program, I promise you, sir. And he came up and I always get people coming up to me at conventions, and I love it. The guys, don't ever feel I might not be able to talk to you. I might be running somewhere. Don't ever take it badly. If I'm on the table and I can chat, I love to. So thank you. And he came up and he said something. He went sort of along the lines of, he said, "You must have shot a lot more material for Return to Devil's End than you used in that 50-minute program." And I looked at him and I went, yeah, we did. Yeah, he said, "I'd love to see that footage." And I went, yeah. And I said, "That's really kind of you. That's a great idea." And I didn't mean I didn't mean it, but I went away and suddenly I went, I would like to see that footage. Jesus Christ, I haven't looked at it in X because I hadn't mastered all of the rushes up to digital by that point. I hadn't done them. And I came home and I got the tapes out, and I actually gave me an excuse to digitize that bunch. They're all done now. Everything's done. All the tapes have gone. Thank God. And I looked through them and I thought, this is a great idea, because we shot in rushes. If you talk about like edited rushes, i.e., not every inch of camera wobble and everything, but if you look at actual footage that is of interest, we shot 4 hours of material. Okay,
Fantastic.
and a lot of it isn't in the 50-minute edit. Like there's a whole thing when we did the press call, and they're all on the green where there's banter going on, but I didn't use it in the edit because it wasn't relevant to the story I was telling. There are 2 takes, sometimes 3 takes of the walkie-talkies across the green. The interviews that we did with all of the actors are 4 times longer than the bits we used in the edit. So I thought, right, I'm going to do it. So I can't confirm when that will come out, but I've edited the 2 there's going to be 2 productions, 2 DVDs, download stream and everything, and they're each of them 2 hours long. Volume 1 is the walkie-talkies with everybody walking around Allbourne and up at the airfield. And Volume 2 is all the sit-down interviews with all 4 of the actors and Christopher Barry. I tend to judge everything on what do I think, i.e., is it worth doing this? Will I enjoy it? I mean, I think you have to. If you can't always try and imagine what other people's views are, because it's impossible. Everybody's different. But I try to work on the litmus paper if I think it's a good idea. Like in Day of the Daughters, interviewing Carrie John's daughter and interviewing Elizabeth Sladen's daughter, and getting their thoughts on taking over the roles of their mothers and what it was like losing both their mothers so early in life. It just seemed I really wanted to hear their story. And when I asked Nick if he'd do it, he said he'd really like to hear that story. You work on gut, and actually that was a really successful production.
I still think you should call it Return to Devil's End.
Well, it's tempting, but it doesn't really. Unfortunately, you've got to. I mean, I know when I told you that up in Carlisle, it all gave us a hoot. But the problem is, you do need to name something that makes sense to people so that they know what you're
I'm
buying.
afraid
Yeah.
so.
And that would have just confused everybody. They'd have thought we dug up all the bodies and took them back to Alborn, which, funnily enough, would have been quite prosaic. But no, no, we're not doing that. John would not be pleased. No.
No, I'm really looking forward to it because there's on the original production there's some really funny stuff with like you really get the sense of rapport between them all and everyone's fondness for each other, and Nicholas is having such a good time doing it. The bit I always talk about, I think, is it an outtake somewhere when Mr. Pertwee kind of critiques John Levine pointing out Peter Grimwade or something. It's absolutely, John sort of says that was a very spontaneous reaction there from Mr. Levine, and it's like the love just bleeds out the screen. So it'd be really nice to see the whole thing, and it contrasts well with Chris Barry giving such a serious sort of interview. He's always it's going to be really nice to see more of it.
I remember when we were making it. I mean, as a producer director, I'm so grateful these days when I have people like Dylan Reese who's a director in his own right, but can AD for me or production manage, because it takes away the terrible responsibility of having to plan and organize while you're filming and directing. And for Return to Devil's End, don't get me wrong, everybody there, all of the crew, Robin Lee was there again with Mark Ayres, and a friend of mine, Keith Watts, who'd done filming for me for corporate jobs, came down, and Chris Neville, who was doing sound with him. The crew were just so supportive, and the locals were brilliant. Of course, the actors just didn't give me any hassles at all. It was magic time. As much magic as when I shot White Witch of Devil's End with Damaris when we were there for the day, when we did the cutaway shots. I have a very special affinity with Alborn, and I always enjoy going there. I've got friends there, again, lifelong friends. I've got a friend called Graham Palmer who was there when they shot the Demons, and he stayed a lifelong friend, and I visit him and his wife Jane as much as I possibly can, and they're back living in Alborn again now, so I'm looking forward to seeing them when we shoot the links, because Nick and I need to shoot the links for this before we can get it out, but it will be out.
Sontaran?
Hey?
You're shooting links to
No,
Sontaran?
no.
Oh
no, I don't get the joke. I'm sorry.
Come on, dear. Lynx is the name of the Sontaran.
Oh, how funny! Oh my God, I can't cope with you two. You are honestly, you are professionals, aren't you? Go. I'll tell you that went over my almost bald head completely.
I have a question actually. If you've kept every bit of rushes, I might be showing my ignorance here. Has there ever been a behind the scenes thing on using the trims or whatever for the drama stuff that you've done? Could there be a downtime making of, for example?
Well, we did. We always did. I mean, that we were doing VAM for our productions right from the start. The only one that we never did VAM for, because we were basically desperate just to get it shot, was Wartime.
Sure.
But from Wartime onwards, everything. In fact, I could tell you a funny little story about Return to Devil's End. I think I've told you this, but years later, somebody, I think it was Ben or Andy from Galaxy 4, bless them, rang me up and said, there's a video out there. Somebody was at the shooting of Return to Devil's End with a camera and was shooting all behind the scenes stuff with you, around you and filming. And he said, it's amazing. And I went, really? You're joking? Surely anyway, so he said, yeah, it's on YouTube or something. And I looked at it and I went, my God, this is great. Who the hell did this? How could they have been there? And I went, hang on. They're right next to us. I would have known it. I would not. The only person who could have let this happen was me. And this penny suddenly started to drop. It was a video that I'd got Robbie Mobert to shoot. And I'd forgotten that we had it, and I had the original tape sitting in the archive, and had forgotten. And Robbie had given it to a friend. He'd kept a copy and he'd given it to a friend in all innocence. And that friend or a friend of theirs. This is always the way people
Yeah.
don't think. If I give you a copy of this, you promise you won't. And of course, eventually somebody posted it. It was multi-generational, the copy. I think I got it taken down. But that took me back. I found the bloody tape, pulled it, and I thought, my God, this is brilliant. And so and I'd shot her behind the scenes and I'd forgotten. And when we did the Daemons of Devil's End, the wonderful 3-disc set which Kosh put out, I included that with Return to Devil's End with White Witch of Devil's End, which was lovely.
Of course.
Fantastic.
So yes, to answer your question, from really fairly early we were shooting behind the scenes, and of course the biggest one that is the most humorous is that the making of Mind Game is longer than Mind Game.
Yes.
And Dylan Reese has always said it was watching that documentary that inspired him to get into the business, which is wonderful.
That's fantastic. Do you know what? You've suddenly given me an idea. The making of Downtime. There's a podcast in there.
I think.
Oh no, please, no more. Don't interview me anymore, please.
I've got your quotes for good.
I think I don't think I've ever bought Downtime on disc. I've got the VHS still. No, I don't. No, I haven't got Downtime. Downtime I don't have on disc. I'll need to do something about that, especially if there's VAM stuff to see.
I should say that the problem with Downtime, because I do get a lot of people asking me, is that that was a co-production with Donny Temporal and Reeltime and Ian Levine's Tropicana, and we as a group, because we've never made it, we're still down about 15 grand on that. Between us, because it was the most expensive spin-off ever made. The final budget for Downtime was something like £55,000.
Wow!
I couldn't have afforded to make it without Andrew Beach and DSL and Ian and Tropicana Holdings. So shout out to both of them,
of course,
for helping make it happen. But we licensed it to a distributor about 15 years ago now, and they brought it out on DVD. And funnily enough, that led to my long relationship with Kosh and all the productions we brought out with Kosh. So I got a huge plus out of it. But the negative out of it is that they own it until about another 7 years.
Jeez.
And they won't reissue it on DVD, and they won't give me the rights back for me to do. And that's a bit of a beef issue for me, but I can't do anything about it. It's their decision. So for those of you out there who want to get Downtime in physical media, I can only apologize and say that one day, if I'm still alive, you will get the chance.
Yay. That's an optimistic and pessimistic outlook at the same time there, Keith.
Yes.
Sorry, realistic, I think, is the word you're looking for,
Let me just enthuse about Downtime for a minute. I loved it at the time. It was because it'd been 6 years since we'd had anything on TV. It was glorious, and I always remember there's a bit when the Briggs sort of says, "All we have to do is pull the plug," and seeing him again and I remember my sister being so pleased to see Lizzie, as Sarah Jane again. It was honestly, it was joyous. The people talk about the 90s as the wilderness years, but there was a lot of gold.
Well, a lot of stuff. Bill Baggs was at that time knocking out some quite original productions. I remember when Dylan brought. This is how I actually met Dylan, because Dylan brought out a book called The Wilderness Years.
Did indeed, yeah.
And I somebody told me that I was in it. I don't think he interviewed me for it, but I could be wrong. Okay, this could be a mismemory. So whichever way it went, Dylan, it's just my old brain. Either he interviewed me, and perhaps he did, and then I got a copy, or he did the book, and then I heard about it, and I got a copy. And the thing that I thought was wrong within the book was, and we've talked about it a lot, I don't mean huge wrong, but he gave the impression in the book that the wilderness years, everything happened in the wilderness years, and it didn't happen before and it didn't happen afterwards. And of course, that for me wasn't true. We were producing before that period. We produced all the way through it, and we carried on afterward. You know, and he agreed. That's one of the reasons why he wanted to do the myths and legends. I've remembered. There you go, guys. If you've been watching this or listening to this all the way through, it gets there in the end. The myths and legends, the real-time picture story, which was published by Tellus. That was one of the things that he wanted to put that right in a little way and do the history of real time in and put it more into perspective.
Fantastic.
And I mean, the marvelous work that was done by Virgin Books and not so much the BBC, but Virgin Books during the wilderness years.
Yeah.
The BBC, I don't think would have ever got into doing novels during that time if it hadn't have been for Virgin Books.
Absolutely.
They made it happen.
Yeah.
I think. And the wilderness years wasn't, but obviously, we all want a TV program being made. We're getting to that point again now, and we've all just heard, and I'm sure it's something you guys have been talking about today about this announced supposed knowledge that they're not going to be showing or making even the drama for Christmas, and they're talking about God knows what's going on. I'm not even going to conjecture, but there's a lot of four-letter word going in and around the BBC at the moment, and none of us are privy to it.
Yeah.
But I throw my hat into the ring and say I agree that really the program needs a rest, and the program needs a completely new production team. I am not having a go at anybody who's worked on it, because some of them are friends. But I do think it needs a rest, and it needs a clean bill. And it's what Paramount are doing with Star Trek now. They're just taking a break, and they're saying we're going to go into theatrical releases again, because the treadmill of television production is it's a law of diminishing returns, I think they're finding.
Yeah.
And I get them. I get them on that. And I think Doctor Who needs that as well. It just needs time out and fresh minds.
Yeah. Not do any harm.
That's my opinion here. And I respect anybody else's opinion who doesn't agree with me. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think we should get ready to wind up, because we've taken up a lot of your time, Keith, and I know you're doing some traveling very soon to come back to these shores. So before we go, of course, we actually have a prize courtesy of your good self, with 5 real-time productions to give away. Doctor Who Lockdown.
Well, what do you want me to do?
Give us a question that someone can answer.
Yeah, but we can get people to get in touch with us.
Okay. I mean, you get the thing with these. You sometimes you're listening to somebody else setting questions, and they're either ridiculously naive and
go
stupid.
easy. Go easy.
Yeah. Go easy, or can I make it something complicated? No. Okay. All right. We'll make it a really simple question based on what's been said today. What was the most expensive real-time pictures drama?
There we go.
Wonderful.
And listeners, if you want to enter, you can comment on our social media post for this episode, or you can send an email to the Earth2podcast at gmail.com and put "sorry to bother you, Peter" in the header.
Yes, and Peter will send that one to me. The award-winning Earth2 podcast. I'll just throw that out there.
Fantastic.
Oh God, we've all got awards.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you quickly, it was Brandon that put the idea in our heads, because he does his conventions, and he'd said to me, "Have you ever thought about entering Earth 2 in our popcorn awards?" And I went, "Well, I have, but do you not have to be in the States?" And he said, "No, not at all." So he sent me links to the forum, and we did it. And then a week or two later, he emailed me again and said, "You've won, but don't tell anyone till Friday." And he also said he asked us to do a reaction, a sort of an acceptance video.
It is weird when you start winning awards, and you. I mean, not long ago we got the award, a wonderful award from Austin Indie Fest, best of festival.
Wow.
For Monster Man, and they absolutely loved it because of what it was. They got what we were trying to say with it, and they loved it. But to win Best of Festival in a film festival that has dramas that people have spent a fortune making is a bit, wow. And sometimes you do need, I mean, when we did SIL, and I put that out there during COVID, I just went ballistic with submissions because I really didn't think we'd win anything. And then we won over 100 awards. and you sort of think, oh, maybe I overdid it on the submission. But at the same time, you think, well, we're doing something that people like.
Yeah.
And it's lovely that you get that. And it's great for you guys as well to know that people appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well done, the Earth 2 podcast.
Yes.
Well done, Reeltime. So, Power of Three's not won an award, but I will next year.
Well done, us.
Your availability check for Justice League of America number 144 will be with you shortly.
God.
So there.
Excellent.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, Keith, thank you so much for your time.
Yes,
It's
thank
been
you,
an
Keith.
absolute blast. I mean, I think when the three of us get together, we literally could chat all day.
Well, I can't get you away from the damn stand. I mean, other people want to buy DVDs. You just hang there. I'll tell you what, the next time you interview me, why don't we make it when we do the 200th Mythmakers?
There's a good shout.
That works.
We will do
fun.
that.
We're on 190, so we got 10 to go.
Okay.
Right? Wait, no, we'll be on 191 in a few weeks' time once we've done Colin. And that's full circle. There we are.
Oh, there we go. We like it.
Brilliant.
Keith, before we go, we always like to play out the song. And I've got a track in my mind. Jess Glynn and Clean Bandit with Real Love, because we really love Reeltime.
Oh, that's fine with me. I'm just going to break up here.
He's got it's so emotional. Poor Keith. Oh.
I know.
Keith, listen, we really appreciate your time and we
Always.
appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much for talking to us.
It's a pleasure, guys. Thanks very much. Good night,
See you soon.
everybody, or good day, everybody, or good morning.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Oh, you got the feeling that I wanna feel. Oh, you got the feeling that I know is real, real.